Trey Hendrickson's holdout with the Cincinnati Bengals gets all the attention. But I think Terry McLaurin's holdout with the Washington Commanders is actually a bigger deal. I'll explain on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready, Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert, the brain, Luke Braun. On today's episode, we're going to do a little this or that. We're going to talk about Anthony Richardson making an impact on the Colts still this season. We're going to talk about two rookies who could impact the Bengals and the Browns, but we're going to start with big-time veteran impacts and two holdouts for training camp with Trey Hendrickson and Terry McLaurin. Before we dive into all of it, though, do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Luke, training camp is here. And as expected, one of the biggest dramas throughout the entire offseason, Trey Hendrickson contract situation with the Cincinnati Bengals will continue here. No shock, really, but yesterday, on Monday, there was some optimism that the Trey Hendrickson deal was going in the right direction, and our guys over at Locked On Bengals talked about that.
I thought it was noteworthy that Mike Brown was as blunt as he was about Trey, saying, I want it to get done. I think he wants it to get done. I think it will get done. We're actively working on this. The guys in the front office are actively working on this as we speak. And this was around noon or so on Monday. And for him to come out and say that and be that direct, I think it's intriguing. It feels like there's a little Trey Hendrickson smoke. And by the way, there should be. You should want him to get into camp and be in camp. And whether or not it's done by Wednesday, I'm okay with it going a few days or a week, but you don't want it to really impact things and impact the season and impact week one and impact Trey's mindset or impact the defense. And it felt like that there is, even if it hasn't felt like it all offseason, the Bengals clearly want this done. They want to pay Trey more. They want to keep him here. What does that look like? I think there's 1,000 different ways it could look, honestly. There are multiple, at least, realistic ways that it could look. Is it going to be enough for Trey? We'll see. But certainly some optimism and some desire, I would say, on Mike Brown's part to get it done. That being said, his desire might be much different than what Trey is asking for. And that's what's tough. It's not like he said numbers or got into details on what the contract could look like, but he certainly does want Trey here. And we'll see if they can find common ground and get something done.
Well, all of that optimism is gone because Trey Hendrickson isn't even in Ohio as training camp starts. He's down in Florida. And now we're getting reports from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that things broke down in a major way. It was contentious. It was blah, 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 blah. And I just it's just the Bengals all over again doing Bengals things.
It's been the way that this is for a while. I think it's been pretty clear for a while that there is so much ground between the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson that I don't know how this gets resolved, and this could end in a weird camp time trade to the Lions or whatever, which we've discussed quite a bit over the offseason on Locked On NFL. So anybody who's just tuning in now because camp is just starting, you can go back to those and listen to those discussions for where we think he could go. But it feels like it's careening toward a divorce. And that the Bengals have made that choice and are just kind of waiting for Trey Hendrickson to agree to it.
Yeah. They basically
totally speculative, but that's
and he's trying and they're trying to get something done and push him, but the Bengals just aren't going to do it. And I think that in their position, it would be tough for them. They need to remake that defense. And I guess I don't know. If the next good version of the Bengals includes Trey Hendrickson. I'm not certain about that, and they might not be certain about that.
I think they've decided it doesn't.
Yeah, I think they have probably decided that. Now, here's the thing, though. I think the next great version of the Washington Commanders has to include Terry McLaurin. So that's why Hendrickson is the name that gets all the buzz, and he's probably a better player overall than Terry McLaurin. Like, I mean, he led the NFL in sacks last year. It's hard to say he's not a bigger impact player than Terry McLaurin. But my point here is I think Terry McLaurin's holdout would make a bigger impact if both players were to, sit out the season. Because the Commanders, I think, are better suited to be contenders right now than the Bengals are in the aggregate overall. So I think if you take Terry McLaurin off the Commanders, you weaken that team to a point where I don't think that they can be a contender anymore. You take Trey Hendrickson off the Bengals, well, I don't know if they were a true contender anyways. So I think Hendrickson is clearly a better player, but Terry McLaurin's holdout could have a bigger impact on the NFL landscape. And honestly, the Commanders have the Jets to blame because their recent extension with a wide receiver might be a big holdup in the Terry McLaurin situation.
Garrett Wilson agreed to a 4-year extension with the New York Jets, $112 million, $72 million guaranteed. Places him firmly in the top tier wide receiver pay scale, reshapes the financial ceiling for guys like Terry McLaurin. Garrett Wilson, now the 5th highest annual average value once his deal goes into place. If Washington wants to keep McLaurin long term, this is going to reinforce the need to, give him some money. Garrett Wilson's annual average value, $32.5 million, which is exactly what the floor has been. We've been talking about this. $32.5 million to us has been the floor for Terry McLaurin.
And McLaurin is in his 30s, going to be 30. Like, if you had to pay one of these guys, McLaurin or Hendrickson, which team is better off paying him?
So I think I'm with you in that, like, a bad defense is just also a bad defense, like with or without Trey Hendrickson. But I think there's something to, like, hitting a team where it's weakest can make a weakness into a thing that holds the team entirely hostage.
Yeah.
I don't see how the Bengals, like, compete in the AFC North with a defense without Trey Hendrickson. I think with Trey Hendrickson, they can at least hold things up and try to win games 45-35. Without Trey Hendrickson, I just feel like how does everybody not hang 40 on you? With the way that defense was last year and how it's, I don't know how much you can even say it has improved, especially if you don't get Shemar Stewart in the building. We'll get to that. But with McLaurin, the Commanders' offense runs so much through them that you go from a bad unit or from a good unit to a bad unit, like offensively.
Yes.
From a good side of the ball to a bad side of the ball, because so much of what makes the Commanders good funnels through McLaurin. You have to totally redesign things. And maybe that means you're leaning into Jaden Daniels is running more or something like that. I think there's ways to do that. Debo's no slouch, but like there's an impact. Here's where I'm going to disagree with you though. This Commanders thing feels like it's going to get done.
Yeah.
They'll just pay him. It's fine. They'll do it. They have the money to do it. They have the money in the future to do it. Like they have 21 million cap space this year, but this year is not the one that's going to matter. That's not where the money's going to kick in for a big Terry McLaurin extension. It'll probably have, you can void year it, which the Commanders do a lot. Right. You can do all kinds of, signing bonus shenanigans and stuff to make that money hit in the next couple of years, where the Commanders have very few commitments right now. Like there's a lot of 1-year stuff and there's a lot of short-term commitments right now, but the Commanders have the resources to do this. It's just a staring contest. It's a negotiation thing. It feels to me like the McLaurin one gets done. It does not feel to me like the Trey Hendrickson thing gets done. That is a thing that is going to harm the Bengals just the way that James said he didn't want it to. It seems like it's going to, but with McLaurin, it's going to cost a little bit more. And that's why everybody wants to race to get their contracts done. Garrett Wilson's going to be a little cheaper than McLaurin because Garrett Wilson went first. And if it were the other way around, it would be then McLaurin would be the cheaper one. Get your contracts done fast. But I think that's much more of a drop in the bucket versus, the only good player on your defense, he's outie.
Yeah, I guess I understand that. I just, from the general landscape, I don't think the Bengals are as important of a team as the Commanders are. And I think that McLaurin's absence would kind of shift things in the NFL, where I don't know if Hendrickson's absence would really do much with where I think the Bengals are at right now. But speaking of the
always
Bengals,
get worse, Tyler. Never tell yourself it can't get worse.
And
God
speaking
will
of talking
find a
about the
new way to
Bengals,
harm you.
it's getting worse. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. For me personally, I didn't realize just how much money I was spending on online shopping until I got with Monarch. And now that I'm doing investments and stuff, having all of that financial stuff in one place just makes it easy for a guy like me to kind of manage everything. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's Monarch Money. Code .com code Locked On NFL for half off your first year. Also, today's episode is brought to you by Rougiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra, Cialis. You've maybe even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rougiet Ready. Rougiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rougiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. I love that it's completely online. Rougiet connects you with a board-certified doctor and ships your treatment discreetly to your door. Head to Rougiet.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rougiet website for full safety information. All right, Luke, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. Talked about the Bengals and talked about the Commanders with Terry McLaurin and Trey Hendrickson, but now we got to stay on the Bengals. And man, I feel bad. We're just on the Bengals case here, but it's just every corner that you look around, there's another Bengals jump scare. They're just everywhere. You can't avoid them. It's a horror film. That's why I called this Holdout Horrors, this episode, because it's tough out here. And again,
crazy. They haven't even had the worst offseason in the AFC North.
Absolutely.
You see those Steelers unis? Man.
Luke, our fashion expert here on Locked On NFL, but Shemar Stewart, man, it's getting uglier. His agent is responding to the Bengals ownership. The Bengals owner is saying stuff like, if he's in jail, I ain't paying him. I mean, I saw my guy Tony Wiggins from the barbershop, Locked On NFL, saying, if you think he's going to be in jail, why did you draft him? Which is an interesting thing to say. I don't think the Bengals wanted to draft Shemar Stewart. I think they had other plans, and they got taken away from them right before. But either way, things are ugly, and our guys at Locked On Bengals, I'm sorry I got to use you guys so much here, but got to talk about this one too.
Well, this is exactly what we've been talking about for the last 2 months. So there's no surprises here, but maybe hearing it spelled out the way Mike Brown spelled it out will change some people's minds. I think that the one thing that stands out is the separation of player from advice or player from issue being argued about that Mike Brown and Duke Tobin both had. I've also seen some people reacting to Mike Brown talking about paying people in jail and saying that it's like a crappy thing for him to say. There's no good way to talk about defaults. I think he was really good about specifying like hypothetical situation that I don't think is going to happen, but if it did happen, I don't want to pay somebody who is totally unavailable because they're incarcerated. Like, it's a pretty reasonable thing for a business owner to say, I think. But I think it still seems, from my vantage point, like the Bengals are doing something that most teams in the NFL are doing. Mm-hmm. There are some people out there who are saying that the Bengals language is different from other teams that have similar language. And I'm sure it is not identical. There's no boilerplate for this in the NFL. Every team does it differently. But I'm not sure I buy that it's much more permissive to the team or anything like that. And I don't think that this continued public mudslinging is productive for either side.
You know, I saw James from Locked On Bengals talking about this, and he said that the Shemar Stewart situation is way worse for the Bengals than the Trey Hendrickson thing. And look, I got to agree 100% there. Hendrickson is just a good veteran who wants to get paid more money. We see that every single year. With Trey Hendrickson, things are maybe a little nastier with things in the reports, but we see veterans do this stuff every single year. What we don't see is what Shemar Stewart is doing, and him being willing when he hasn't earned the right to do it in the locker room. When Trey Hendrickson shows up after getting his money, everybody's going to be like, let's go, bro. You earned it, dude. Way to get paid. Shemar Stewart hasn't earned anything in the locker room. Nobody believes that Shemar Stewart should be bad-mouthing the organization for what he wants or what he does. I think this Shemar Stewart thing could get super, super ugly. We could see the worst version of this situation, and I think that's worse ultimately for the Bengals than what's going on with Trey Hendrickson.
So the dispute, like what they're fighting over, I think is the key factor here. With Trey Hendrickson, they're fighting over future guarantees. This is about a guy who's going to be on the wrong side of 30 and a team who doesn't want to commit a whole bunch of money to a guy in his age 33 season or whatever, right?
Normal stuff.
And while like short term that's disastrous for them, okay, they don't want to be locked in, especially if they're going to be kind of rebuilding that defense. They don't want to be locked in on an older player. Okay, that's fine. Trey Hendrickson is well within his rights to do something else, to go to Florida and say, I'm not dealing with this. I'm not going to go be in camp while you figure this out. Okay, we'll figure that out, right? Shemar Stewart's grievance is a relatively small thing. The like in jail comment is Shemar Stewart is not going to go to jail. Like there's no pending allegations that we know of.
Right.
At time of recording, that we know of with Shemar Stewart. This is entirely a hypothetical. There's a sentence that Kirk Cousins talked about during his free agency thing when he was kind of weighing his teams last offseason that has stuck in my head, and I actually think it's like a bar and a half. It's not about the dollars, it's what the dollars represent, is what he said. I think that's a fantastic way to think about this. It's not about a little bit more guaranteed money for Shemar Stewart or any of these second round rookies that did their thing. It's about the representation of commitment. It's about the Bengals saying, welcome to the team. We just spent our first round pick on you. But by the way, if you misstep, you get in trouble.
We don't trust you.
We don't care. We're not going to stick by you. That's what it tells you. That's what it says. And that's why there's a principle to this matter. It's nobody's fighting over a 5-digit number of guaranteed dollars. They're fighting over principle. Whereas with Trey Hendrickson, it is kind of about guaranteed dollars. It's about somebody trying to maximize their value and a team trying to maximize how much they can get out of a salary capped environment, which is why this Trey Hendrickson thing like concerns me a lot, and not so much as the other unsigned rookie who is in trouble, but that is like expected to hold things up, but not be a total deal breaker. And I don't see how these guys reconcile. And also Mike Brown, shut up. Mike Brown, don't go on TV anymore. Don't say anything to a reporter anymore. Mike Brown. Hey, Mike Brown, look at me. Mike Brown, shut up. Stop talking. Shush.
Well,
you're not helping yourself. This is advice. Okay. I'm not being mean.
I think Trey Hendrickson could get over it. We're getting to a place where I'm not certain that Shemar Stewart will get over it. And imagine if he truly decides to sit out the season and go back into the draft. Like, that would be unprecedented, dude. So
you talked to Caleb Williams' dad.
Right. He was thinking about it. So I just think that has the ability to end up as a bigger black eye than any of this Trey Hendrickson stuff for Stewart. But here's the thing. Shemar Stewart, obviously unsigned, actually isn't the only rookie that is currently unsigned. There is one more player. And if it's not going to be the Bengals, it's gonna be the Browns. And Quinshon Judkins
the Browns is part of off-field issues. Name a more iconic team.
I know, right? Quinshon Judkins is part of that second-round pick equation that started to bust up here in the last few days, and obviously everyone's pretty much gotten it figured out. It was a thing for a while, but now the dam has been broken, and everybody else is signed except Quinshon Judkins, because now his legal situation is involved in it. And actually, Luke, I'm going to do this again. I think Judkins' absence, if he were to be absent for whatever reason, would actually be more impactful than the absence of Shemar Stewart with the Bengals. And this is why.
The number one thing that has to happen for the Browns offense to have success in 2025 is make the run game their identity. It's the premise of why this team is going back to Kevin Stefanski's offense. That outside zone gap with some gap concepts mixed in, run scheme, where you get Wyatt Teller oftentimes pulling around the one side and being a lead blocker, but you get the outside zone stuff where running backs can just make a quick decision and go. That is the thing that they have to get back to doing. It's what made Kevin Stefanski's offense in the early years here in Cleveland so successful.
If Trey Hendrickson is back, Miles Murphy was a former first-round pick who's supposed to be a defensive end that can impact the game for the Bengals. Shemar Stewart is a development player who, if the Bengals are smart, they weren't expecting him to be one of their primary starters this year anyways. But if you look at Cleveland's run game, Jerome Ford, who I think is nothing more than a backup. They draft Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee, who's more of a smaller speed guy. Judkins, as a second-round pick for them, was supposed to be the bell cow back that replaced Nick Chubb. So I think Judkins out of the Browns offense actually has a bigger impact than Stewart off the Bengals defense.
I can't go here with you after the last argument was, well, the Bengals defense is going to be bad anyways, so who cares? It's the Browns. They're not a factor. I'm sorry. I don't care what happens to you in your Kenny Pickett-led season.
Hate.
It ain't his. Well, it's kind of his fault because he was in on the Deshaun Watson thing. But I'm sorry, Browns. I don't need to look at you this year. Okay, and you're welcome. We'll let you do your thing when in your Kenny Pickett year, and we'll talk to you in 2026. I don't really care what happens here. So. Look, if Quinshon Judkins is in trouble, it makes sense that they would sort of hold off on like contract stuff until they know what that is.
Yes.
Until they know if there's going to be suspensions, what game checks are going to be forfeited or whatever, structuring all that out. It kind of makes sense to let one thing play out before you do the other. And this is another one where like, I'm sure that in a month we'll never talk about this again, but the Bengals, like Shemar Stewart thing, there's like a precedent that the Bengals are trying to set, and they're trying to set it alone. The NFL has already kind of lost this second round guaranteed money fight.
Yes.
Like everybody got guaranteed money, and I bet Quinshon Judkins is going to as well. It's probably just going to be a thing about voided guarantees for games where you're suspended, which is very much at issue here. But eventually you're going to find out exactly how many games are suspended. He's suspended for, if at all, and then you'll be able to kind of work that out, but that would like affect things. So it makes sense for them to be like, hey, let's just like table this for now. It makes plenty of sense to me why that would be like, it's a delay, not a roadblock. Yes. And with Shemar Stewart, it's like a roadblock, but by Halloween, whatever, the Browns will be a nice 1-7 and we won't have to think about him again. Good luck with Joe Flacco. Like, I don't care about you.
It'll be interesting to see how scrappy the Browns are going to end up being. But with that being said, a team that might be scrappy as well is the Indianapolis Colts. But the question is, which quarterback could lead them to scrappiness? This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat. Get your draft board ready and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and Luke, looking at you, are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August the 4th. Stay tuned and get started by creating or joining a Yahoo Fantasy Football League at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL, and let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, Luke, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about Hendrickson or McLaurin's holdout, talked about Shemar Stewart or Quinshon Judkins' holdout as the two last rookies that haven't signed. But now I want to move to another this or that because we got some other training camp news before things are set to kick off. First, the Indianapolis Colts, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones comes in for competition. Richardson suffers a shoulder setback with the shoulder that he injured his rookie season at the end of the all-season program. There's some concern about whether he'll be ready for training camp, but we find out he'll be full go with no restrictions, except a volume restriction, which seems
except being on the second team because he's a second string quarterback. But
well, the question becomes then,
it sounds like what is happening.
What would it actually take for him to win the job, and would it matter? Our guys from Locked On Colts talked about that.
You do wonder the degree to which they have continued faith in Anthony Richardson, such that I think it's probably early edge Daniel Jones in camp. It's silly because Jones is not going to do anything to lose the job in camp. He's Daniel Jones, right? He will behave. He will obey. He will do what he's supposed to do in the scheme, and he will throw accurate footballs 5 to 12 yards down the field. And Richardson's not going to do anything in camp to win the job other than what you already know, right? He's going to hit 4 insane throws, right? Is he still going to have some bad accuracy sprays? Yes. Obviously the number one thing he can do to win it is just be healthy for the entirety of camp. So it's hard to figure out what's going to move the needle on them between now and September 1st. But my guess is going to be that Daniel Jones is the starter and that we see both of them for a decent amount of games over the course of the year.
I mean, I think at this point it's unlikely that Anthony Richardson is able to get the job back. But if he does, Stephon Diggs also is cleared and good to go for Patriots camp. We got that news. Who do you think makes a bigger impact this season, Anthony Richardson or Stephon Diggs?
I mean, I'm going with a guy who I know is going to be a starter. Diggs ain't competing for his job, man. He's and I think that's getting him in New England is huge to me, even though he's obviously not going to be part of the Patriots' long-term plans just based on age, but having a nice outlet for Drake May to throw to and kind of help him get a little bit more of a foothold. May was in and out of the lineup last year. We didn't get to see a lot. This is a big year for Drake May, not necessarily to show us anything, but to learn things. And you want a fairly normal setup, which they did not have last year. So I think that is huge. Just in I have seen Stephon Diggs help a young quarterback develop before, with my own 2 eyes. And he is an inaccuracy eraser, which is huge. It can help you build a little bit of confidence and stuff. You can spray him a little bit and he catches way, way, way bigger catch radius than he should have at his size. Yeah. That's kind of the point of him. That is very, very friendly to a young quarterback. And he's very friendly to his quarterback too. I know there's a lot of stuff about him being like a diva and stuff, but not with his QB. He's very good with his QB. Unless women get involved. Don't worry about it, Buffalo. But you didn't hear anything. But I think there's a big impact there. I don't know what impact Anthony Richardson. You can sometimes sense it when a team is giving up on a draft pick.
Yes.
We're getting there with the Colts.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's going to be much impact because I don't know if he's going to win the job. What impact are you going to have on the bench, dude? Well, I don't care how healthy you are.
I guess this conversation comes down to my skepticism of the Patriots. I don't think the Patriots are going to have a great offense, even if Drake May is a good player, because I think they have terrible offensive coaching.
No, I don't think that's the point of this year for them.
Right. And I think that Diggs is also a guy who is coming off a major injury. And I know that Richardson gets injured, but I mean, Diggs is too. I could see a situation where Anthony Richardson actually plays in more games than Stephon Diggs because there's injuries. Daniel Jones is terrible. Well, we might as well play Anthony Richardson at this point. So I guess it's just, a fun conversation to round things out with both of those guys getting the kind of go ahead to be there. But what do you think? I guess my last question is, what do you think the expectation should be for the Patriots offense?
I'm going to put it in really vague terms because I'm not going to try to put over it. If you want over-unders, go to FanDuel. But right. I think I want to see, I don't care about the offensive production at all. I want to see Drake May look in command. I want to see him have the reins of this team and look like a tractor, not a trailer, and I think Diggs can be for him what Adam Thielen is for Bryce Young, right? Yeah. We don't care about how many games the Panthers won last year. We care that Bryce Young kind of figured it out. That's what matters to Carolina. I think that's where New England is right now. These teams that are in the middle of rebuilds, we are not expected to take them seriously yet. And we're just sort of hoping to see progress. Well, it's really hard to have progress when no one is ever open and you have Vidarian Lowe at left tackle. Like that, it's let's give it some more of a serious shot here, New England. And I like that what they did this offseason in that regard to build around Drake May. And now let's see some progress. It's a low expectation, but like, yeah, man, your expectations are low when you're one of the worst teams in the league. Like, that's going to happen. Versus how much impact did like Kenny Pickett have on the Steelers at the end? None. You know, right. Like when you're sitting on the bench because it's over, you're not doing anything. And if Daniel Jones truly does win that job, which I like, Ben made a bunch of great points in that clip, but it also like the reporting around Indianapolis has been that like the coaches like the new guy a little bit more because he's doing, he's operating the scheme within what he can do. There's not these huge limitations to what you can ask of him. And, and that they're kind of ready to take the L on Anthony Richardson and move on. And that means that the 2025 Indianapolis Colts are going to be driven, like at least they have a chance to be driven by not Anthony Richardson at all. Anthony Richardson's going to be on the sideline with a baseball cap and a headset. You can't tell me that is going to be an impactful player.
I can't tell you that he's not going to get on the field, though, because I don't really believe in Daniel Jones. Like, yeah, that's all great to believe in him right now and like the new guy better. But once you're 0-4 and Daniel Jones has thrown 5 interceptions, it's like, why not put Richardson back out there and see if we can finally get something out of this before we go down with Jones? But you're right. There's no guarantee that that's going to happen.
I remember Desmond Ritter in Atlanta. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's what we're talking about, right? Like 3 years from now, we're going to look back and go, oh, well, yeah, that didn't do anything about the Colts. But you could look back 3 years from now, and if Drake May is good, going, yeah, it was pretty huge for him to have Diggs at that developmental moment in his life,
Yeah, it'll be interesting
these
to see.
teams are doing anything for us this year. Like that's, and I don't think that's where they're at.
There's always a lot of reporting out of Indianapolis, or there's always a lot of reporting out of New England because it's such a well-covered team. So I'll be interested to see what kind of the vibes around training camp and the offense are after a couple of weeks when we see how things are going. But with that being said, that is going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, the Brain, Luke Braun. As we tell you every episode, thanks for tuning in and stay safe out there.